pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amendment roll call.
Daniel Flores.
Present.
Ronald Rice.
Present.
Lorena Sandejas.
Present.
Maribel Valenzuela. Arturo Magaña.
Here.
Candelario Rangel.
Present.
Luis Galavis.
Present.
Item number 3, call the public.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would like to thank you and welcome the two new commissioners, Ms. Maribel Valenzuela and Mr. Luis Galavis. They're here attending to their first planning. Personally, thank you, new commissioners.
Welcome on board. Very well. Brings us to item number 1. Zoning code text amendment, case number PLN 20-00025.
Share the screen.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Have that really bad echo.
Just one second. We have some technical difficulties.
Did you remove also the windows from the view there of the other members?
All right, we just got to keep this computer muted so no audio comes from it.
The computer muted.
Yes.
But they still prefer.
Yes. It's coming, all the audio that they're receiving is coming from this phone here.
Okay, thank you. It seems like we are ready to start. And before we dive into this project presentation, I would like to take a little bit of time to talk about a little bit about the adoption process of the new infill incentive overlay plan. The infill incentive overlay plan creates the infill incentive overlay plan incentive package. It also identifies the area boundaries, sets specific development regulations, and calls for the establishment of the infill incentive overlay district. Adopting such a complex plan requires two separate processes. That's why we have two items on the agenda tonight. A zoning ordinance text amendment and also a zoning map amendment, or also we know it as an overlay rezoning. A zoning text amendment creates the definition of infill incentive overlay and references the infill incentive overlay plan in the newly created section of the zoning ordinance. So to create that plan, we need to insert in the zoning ordinance. So that's the first process that we are going to be presenting tonight. We need to put it in the book because it doesn't exist. The second process will be the zoning map amendment. We have an official zoning map that we need to create the overlay on this official map. So we need to put it in the code, in the zoning code, and also in the official zoning map. That's why we have two separate processes that we need to present to you and ask recommendations so council can do a couple of ordinances, approval, and a resolution in order for us to establish this as an official code for the city of Somerton. So is that clear as to how we are going to be processing these two different projects or planning processes? Do we have any questions? Okay, well, thank you. And I would like to introduce Saul Alborg. He's been the lead planner of this particular project, and he's been working really hard on this for the past 2.5 years, along with Mr. Hector Tapia. He is the Economic Development Director, and myself. And the three of us have been working on this, putting it together. We put a draft together. We were going to initiate the adoption process back in March, but then COVID hit, and we have to put everything on hold just because we were not able to conduct the public hearings and the public meetings and the neighborhood meetings that we did this time around. So hopefully this time we are going to be finalizing this process. If you don't have any questions for me, I would like to introduce Saul, and he will take us through the actual document itself.
Mrs. Juarez, I had a quick question.
Yes.
On the aspects of the plan, do we ask you now or should we wait till after the presentation? What do you recommend?
Yes, that would be great, Mr. Galavis, and for all the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the residents that are also joining us through Zoom, that if we could, we would like to do the presentation, and at the end of the presentation, we would like to answer any questions or concerns that you may have. After that section of question and answer, after that, we are going to be asking for motions. So if we could, this is a brief PowerPoint presentation. All of you have copies of the full report. If you want us, we can go through the full report. And we also have put together a shorter presentation. So, Mr. Galavis, perhaps if you can write down your questions, and at the end of the presentation, we can answer all of your questions.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. And good evening, members of the Somerton Planning and Zoning Commission and members of the public joining us on Zoom. It is a privilege to present this plan before you tonight because, as Carmen mentioned, we've been working very hard on this plan for 2.5 years, and it's been a long time coming, and we're very excited to share this before you. As Carmen mentioned, it's very important to understand that the plan itself is the big picture. It's the infill incentive overlay plan that creates the infill incentive overlay district. But although we have two cases before you tonight, my presentation, or the majority of my presentation, just focuses on the big picture. The plan, what it does, what it's intended to do, the areas effective, the meat of it, the incentive package, and talks a little bit about the vision for downtown establishing this plan. So I'm just going to jump right into it. So the plan and its purpose. The purpose of the infill incentive overlay plan is to spur infill development and strategically channel its transformational power to revitalize and address several downtown redevelopment opportunities. That's really, in its most simple definition, what the plan is. Downtown Somerton has many unique opportunities that could be addressed by infill. Infill, of course, is development which occurs in a vacant or abandoned area in the middle of the city, within the urban core, as compared to greenfield, which happens on the outskirts of town. So we want to bring in infill growth to downtown. Once the growth gets here, we believe that infill growth could catalyze the redevelopment of downtown. There's many documents that have been adopted by the city of Somerton in the past. The current general plan, the 2013 downtown redevelopment plan, the previous general plan, they all address downtown redevelopment as a priority for Somerton. This is an implementation tool. This is a tool on how we are going to achieve that vision for downtown. By attracting infill, we will attract investment to the area. And once that comes, this plan also has a framework on how to ensure quality development. So we're bringing in growth and we're steering it in the direction that we want to see to achieve that downtown vision. That's the plan. The boundaries of the infill incentive overlay plan are as shown. It's nearly 427 acres in size. It encompasses the entire span of the previous downtown boundaries shown in yellow. These areas were included in the 2013 downtown redevelopment plan, and that for a while, for nearly a decade, that has been downtown. It was entirely within the Main Street corridor, a little bit to the north, a little bit to the south. It also included the future growth area to the west of the city. The 2020 Infill Incentive Overlay Plan recognizes that there are infill opportunities in the residential neighborhoods to the north and to the south of downtown. There's a lot of potential in these areas. There's a lot of vacant properties. There's a lot of properties that could benefit from a revitalization. So and these are the areas to the north here and to the south here. Because no plan included them ever before in any kind of revitalization plan or downtown plan, we included them in this plan. These areas are unique because they're the oldest areas in the city of Somerton. Some of the homes here date back to 1905, 1909, perhaps even older. They're older neighborhoods. They all have alleys. The lots are different than in the newer subdivisions. They actually met all the criteria needed to be considered in this plan. So that was the north and the south. And by adding those areas, we added over 100 acres to the downtown definition of Somerton. And these, of course, are the areas shaded in black. So aside from establishing the overall boundaries of the Infill Incentive Overlay District, the Infill Incentive Overlay Plan also calls for the creation of specific sub-districts within the Infill Incentive Overlay District. It's 427 acres, but they're not all the same. We've got a lot of commercial development on Main Street, and the north and the south of Main Street, it's primarily residential. So we wanted the plan to reflect that. That's why we created 3 unique districts within the overall Infill Incentive Overlay District. The Entertainment District is the focal point of the plan. It spans from Somerton Avenue to Cesar Chavez Avenue, and to the north to Spring Street, and to the south to Cano. This block here, that is the core of the plan. That is where we want to see the highest densities, the most commercial uses in all of the city. That is the traditional downtown. And the way we wrote some of the more specific requirements, design guidelines, and uses reflect this. This is intended to be the center of the plan and the center of Somerton, the entertainment district. And as the description says, it is the future economic focal point and premier entertainment anchor of South Yuma County. That is the vision. Next, we have the Pioneer District, which is home to Somerton's oldest established residential neighborhoods, which boast a historic character. These are the homes just to the north of us. You drive down these streets and you see some of these
beautiful homes, some of them with the older traditional architecture styles. That's because they are the oldest homes in Somerton, as mentioned earlier. And the design guidelines which we tailored for this plan reflect that. And some of the incentives are specifically tailored just to improve that, build on the good bones that neighborhood has. That's the Pioneer District. And the Heritage District is primarily to the south, but also has some of the, includes some of Main Street and also some areas along Somerton Avenue. And this is primarily residential as well, but does have a bit of a commercial component because of its, because Main Street does take up a portion of it, and so does Somerton Avenue. So it's kind of a mix. You've got residential, you've got different densities of residential, and you also have some commercial in the Heritage District. And then the last district is the to be determined district. Those are the areas shaded in yellow. The reason this doesn't have a district assigned to it or why it doesn't belong to a district is because this plan is called the Infill Incentive Overlay Plan. But these areas aren't quite ready for infill yet because most of them are underdeveloped or vacant. They've never been developed. So they don't really fit the definition of infill development if something were to come into these areas, but they are part of the 2013 downtown redevelopment plan boundaries. So we didn't want to lose those areas. They've already been part of downtown for the last 7 years. So we made a place for them in this plan. And as the city grows to the west and to the east, it is possible that in the future, these will become infill parcels and downtown infill parcels. We want to make sure that this plan covers them when the need does arrive. Moving on here. So what does the plan actually do? This is what this slide talks a little bit about. We have we talk to people and receive development inquiries on a daily basis. And when someone comes to us wanting to do one of the following things, these are just examples, there's many more examples, but these are the most common proposals that we receive in this part of the city. These are, for example, an addition or remodel to an older house, or building an accessory dwelling unit, also known as a mother-in-law suite or a granny flat or a guest house. Someone wants to build a new home on an old lot that they own somewhere in the district boundaries. Perhaps it's a vacant lot, or they want to tear down an old structure and build new. Or perhaps, this is trendy, building multifamily duplexes, townhomes, or small apartment complexes in this part of town. All these are common proposals that we receive from the residents and from potential investors. And these are all infill examples. But our current zoning ordinance, I don't have a copy to show, but you know what it looks like. Our current zoning ordinance can be a little bit restrictive and doesn't take into account that developing and building in the older part of the city is not the same as building in newer subdivisions on the outskirts. That code is mostly tailored for new development. So we want to create this plan that is a supplemental layer to the zoning ordinance to address to address impediments to proposals such as these, but also all the other kinds. So we just want to make it easier to do this kind of thing in this part of the city. The top 5 most common infill impediments. When infill does come to Somerton, to this part of Somerton, they come to us, and these are the most common impediments to infill development. Number 1 is incompatible zoning districts and land use requirements. Perhaps what they have in mind is not permitted in their underlying base zoning district, and it requires a rezoning and sometimes a general plan amendment. And at that point, the developer or owner of the property might decide it's not worth it to pursue that, and the project dies. That's the most common one. Number 2, restrictive development standards. I talked about how the current code is mostly tailored for development in newer subdivisions. That's because those development standards aren't accounting for this part of town where the lots are smaller, perhaps there's a property line slightly offset, whatever the case may be, narrow lots. The zoning code is our only review tool available. And perhaps the project at that point becomes unfeasible, impossible because of the restrictive development standards, which would at that point require a variance to overcome. Number 3, I kind of touched on it, obsolete lot dimensions. Lots were platted differently back in the 1900s. And they are also, sometimes we run into that a lot where a lot is just too small or too narrow to do anything on it without having to obtain a variance. And that's a very common impediment as well. Parking requirement, that's an enormous one, not just in the residential areas, but also in the commercial areas on Main Street. And drainage, retention basins. Those take up a lot of space. Sometimes, especially if you've got a small lot and you've got your idea what you want to do, you come to the city and you apply, you sit down with it. It turns out that your retention basin is going to take up half of your lot. So it just becomes very hard to do anything. These are not the only impediments to infill, but these are the most common impediments to infill. When drafting this plan and throughout the entire process, there are these points to consider which were true on day one and are still true today as we bring it before adoption to you. And that is that there is a tremendous scarcity of buildable lots in the city of Somerton. You cannot find a lot for sale right now in the city of Somerton. Any buildable land in the city of Somerton is the city should do everything in its power to make sure it does get developed because we don't have that luxury of having thousands of empty lots ready for construction on the outskirts. Land is very precious here. We have some of the most valuable agricultural land in the world surrounding Somerton. And that's my second point, actually. And also, we're very restricted on where we can build because half of the city is within the MCAS high noise and accident potential zone. So we can't just grow. Even if we had the land, we couldn't grow outwards uncontrolled. We're confined by MCAS in that aspect as well. This is still true. We just updated our 2020 general plan, and this is a key goal of that general plan. Somerton wishes to continue redeveloping its downtown area. There is a substantial demand for infill development in the older parts of Somerton. There really is. We take phone calls every day. We take emails from people that have property in the older part of the city, and they want to do something with it because, again, as mentioned, Somerton really doesn't have a lot of buildable, ready lots on the outside. So if they've had land on the inside, there's an opportunity to do something with it. So that demand for infill is already here. We just need to make it easier going forward. Infill development is heavily impeded by the zoning ordinance. That is our only tool we have to review projects. So we need something easier, something that's more tailored for infill development. And all these factors add up to that bottom one that says Somerton is missing out on important development opportunities because we don't have the necessary tools to make infill possible, to make whatever infill project is here, to make that last push and make it a reality. I want to take some time to talk about the incentives in detail, but I'd like to ask if there are any questions up to this point so far. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I just wanted to know your boundaries for your northern limits and your southern limits. they were, so you made them, I guess, specific to the older town, the older parts of town then? I'm just
Yes.
curious how you designated those, the north end limits and the south limits of the map.
Commissioner Galaviz.
Yes.
The northern boundary and the southern boundaries of this plan of the district boundaries. So what we did is that we looked at a subdivision map of the city of Somerton, and we looked for recordation dates, and we took the oldest subdivisions and we tried to piece together the boundaries following the edges of the subdivisions, because these are, I'm talking older than 50 years for most of these. Some of them going back, like I said, to the 1900s. They all share that in common, and we use that to trace our outline. And also, all these properties in the infill incentive overlay plan, with the exception of the Somerton Courts area down here, they all have alley access. So that's one very unique characteristic that we use to trace the boundaries of this. So we were looking for those kind of things, recordation date, and if whether or not they have alley access, because alley access is indicative to the development standards and the platting standards of back in the day. So that's what we use to trace the boundaries. Does that more or less answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to go back to the incentives. So these are, the incentive package is literally the meat of this document. It's called the incentive plan because this is what these incentives do. They incentivize infill development. So as we went over some of the impediments to infill, and we took the most common ones, the most frequent ones, and we created an incentive designed to tackle that impediment. Not all projects will qualify for all of them. Some projects may qualify for eight or nine. Some may only qualify for one. It really does depend. It'll be reviewed on a case-by-case basis as they come in. If a project can qualify for all of them, great. If they can only get one, well, at least they got that one. But I assure you, each and every single one of these is great. I'm just going to start from the top here. Or has the commission read through these incentives and would like me to continue without me going too much into depth? Sure. Oh, yes. Okay, well, just from the top here, the Adjusted Development Standards Incentive. This is an incentive which will allow flexible development standards such as reduced setbacks, increased lot coverage, increased height to construction, new construction in the boundaries of the infill incentive overlay plan without having to obtain a variance or a minor modification / minor variance. So that's what we have right now. If you come in with a project that is encroaching into the required setback or goes over the maximum lot coverage, your only option at that point, if you want to build it that way, is to apply for a variance, which is a 2 to 3 month process and costs you around $300 for residential, more than $500 for commercial. We created an incentive which tackles that and eliminates the need, as long as you stick within certain parameters, which were extensively reviewed by the department. We also didn't bring it down to zero. It's reasonable. It's we're being flexible. We're not going crazy with it. So that's that. We'll reduce setbacks, higher lot coverage, increase height without having to obtain a variance. Adjusted Development Standards Incentive. The Compatible Use Incentive. This incentive allows the healthy mixing of uses in the infill incentive overlay plan boundary area by rolling back use regulations and allows compatible uses from the underlying base zoning districts on any parcel. Okay, this is a common impediment that we have. Someone wants to build a house in the older part of town, a brand new house, and it turns out that their lot is actually multifamily, R3. This current zoning ordinance would say, no, you can't build your house. Even though the entire neighborhood is all residential, all single-family homes, you cannot build your house without doing a rezoning. That happened to the Housing America Corporation a couple of years ago. They bought all these lots on State Avenue. It turns out State Avenue was mostly R3. And we went over the process, and they ended up going with a rezoning. It was a long process, and they did it. Rezoning and a general plan amendment. This incentive eliminates that kind of situation. If you choose to use this incentive, you would be allowed to build your single-family dwelling on a property that's not zoned for it, as long as it's compatible, and vice versa. Perhaps you have a single-family lot and you would like to build something of a higher density, such as a duplex or a townhouse. We would look at it and see if it's compatible with the neighborhood. If the design is compatible, and if it is, then you would be allowed to use this incentive. This is also a neat incentive because it allows for commercial, very limited, low-intensity commercial uses on corner lots in the residential neighborhoods to the north and to the south, such as coffee shops, professional offices for an accountant, that kind of deal. Low-intensity, low-traffic uses. And the uses that we're proposing, all of them, the residential and the commercial, that can be take advantage of this incentive are listed in the plan. They're all there, and whether they are conditional or permitted. The next incentive is the alley paving waiver. This is a really good incentive, and a lot of people that we've spoken to are really excited about this one. Right now, if you have alley access to your property, you have to provide a paved alley up to the point of entrance to your property. So if you're in the middle of the block, you want to have alley access, if that alley is not paved, you may have to, as part of your project, pave 50, 80, 100 feet of alley, which you can incur an astronomical cost. And in a lot of projects at that point, it's like, okay, maybe alley access we're not going to do. This incentive eliminates that, completely eliminates that. The city of Somerton, at some point in the future, hopefully the not so distant future, will eventually pave those alleys. That is the plan. We're eliminating that burden from development. Next is the water retention waiver. This incentive only applies for the entertainment district and the pioneer district. I believe it is the only district-specific incentive. We looked at areas in this district and said, which areas can the city take on excess stormwater and discharge it to our municipal retention basin? Well, it turns out we could do it for the entirety of the entertainment district and the entire pioneer district, which is really good because now projects that come to this part of town won't have to provide on-site water retention, which is a huge benefit because you don't have to give up that land. You could have an extra unit or have more parking or have a bigger store, a bigger building. We have a municipal retention basin that can take that, and we're passing that incentive on to future development. The next one is the accessory dwelling unit incentive. Right now, if you want to have a granny flat or a guest house in your backyard, you need to have a lot of at least 8,000 square feet. And most people do not. So everyone has to either get a minor modification or a variance to make it possible. And this incentive reduces the minimum size of a lot to have an accessory dwelling unit to 6,000 square feet. So the basic size of an R16 lot will now be able to build an accessory dwelling unit on their lot without having to obtain a variance or a minor modification with this incentive. In addition to, you can also rent out that unit. Right now, you can't do that. You actually have to sign an affidavit saying that you won't rent it out. But this incentive will allow you to rent it out, but the owner will have to live on the property. It can't be both be rentals. This is just to ensure control, a little bit of quality control, but also to increase the density of this part of the city, the downtown core. as mentioned, we have not only do we have a scarcity of lots, but we also have a scarcity of dwelling units. There's actually a larger demand for housing than there is supply, as is the case in much of the country. We have a tremendous scarcity of dwelling units available for habitation in Somerton right now, relative to the demand. So this incentive will address all those fronts. Moving on to the parking reduction incentive. Plain and simple, you can, depending on the project, you may be able to qualify for a 50% reduction of the minimum required parking. That's pretty straightforward. Downtown areas typically, to promote walkability, have limited parking. And right now we have several public-owned municipal parking lots which are underutilized. So we believe that we can offer this incentive to spur walkability and also to allow for a larger building footprint, higher density in this area. And I mentioned it's up to 50%, doesn't mean 50% all the time. It just depends on what the nature of the project. And as I mentioned, everything is case by case. Now, the next one is the historic restoration incentive. This one's pretty simple too. If you are applying for a building permit to restore or remodel a building older, predating the year 1950, you can qualify for a 30% permit fee reduction. That's to encourage renovation and restoration rather than tearing down and starting new, because we have some very unique looking, valuable historic buildings that we want to preserve. So this incentive will give you a little waiver for that and your permit fee. If your permit was going to come out of $10,000, that's a $3,000 reduction. That is $3,000 more dollars you can use towards the facade improvement. Which is actually, speaking of facade improvement, that's the next incentive on the list is the facade improvement loan. This one, right now, we have a facade improvement program in the city of Somerton, but it only applies for the properties on Main Street. Properties on Main Street, certain merchants can qualify for a loan, no interest, zero down payment loan from the city of Somerton. And they can use it to beautify or remodel their facade, but it's only for Main Street. This plan is expanding that to the residential areas to the north and to the south. And it'll be the same terms that I just mentioned: zero down payment, 0% interest, short term, $10,000 for the north residential areas to the north and to the south. So that's very, very. I think a lot of people could benefit that, and that have been waiting, that want to do something with their homes or their building. They're just waiting for either the right time or to get a little bit of money. They'll never get this kind of loan from a bank. That's impossible. But they'll be here. It's a very good incentive to have. The next one is the landscaping requirement adjustment. This incentive focuses more on growing our tree canopy, shaded areas, shade trees, versus having projects have to provide so many shrubs, so many flowers. I mean, people can still put those. They look great. We're not saying, no, you can't put that. But the minimum requirements will be reduced to focus on shade tree, providing shade, and hopefully beautifying, cooling the city of Somerton and providing much sought after shade in the summer months. So this one reduces those landscaping requirements and just focuses on more trees in lieu of certain other landscaping elements. And the last incentive is the adaptive reuse incentive. This one's also a very common request that we get in this part of town, wanting to change the use of a property from an office to a restaurant or vice versa, or from a mechanic shop to a beauty salon. That recently we saw that proposal. From a store to a not a warehouse, from a home to a studio, or from a single family to a multifamily. If you're changing the use of the property, and if that changing of the use requires a building permit, the building permit will receive a 30% reduction. similar to the historic restoration incentive. These are the incentives in our incentive package. We think we can tackle about 90% of the most common infill impediments with this incentive package. And we think that we can take a lot of projects from concept to reality just by offering these incentives, which we currently do not have right now. So at this point, are there any questions about the incentives? Yes, Commissioner.
First question is, are you going to be able to contact all of these properties that are available in this district? Advise them that this is available? Know that these incentives are available, that the funds are available?
Vice Chairman Rice, well, all these properties have, all the property owners have received notice that the plan is coming, that it was coming. Now, once we have it adopted, we are, of course, going to talk about it on our social media page, our Facebook. We're going to put it on the city website. We were talking about reaching out to the local newspaper too, to Bajo el Sol and to the Yuma Sun, and running the story. And we will try to get the word out, and the incentive package and this plan, it'll always be here at City Hall. But to answer your question though, as if we're going to contact into every single property to let them know that this is available, that hasn't been discussed.
How many properties are we talking?
We're talking roughly 950 properties.
So that's a letter for each one that's 50 cents each, that's 450 cents.
Roughly speaking, yes, and that's certainly something that we could consider.
Something you got to consider.
Yeah, no, it's all about getting the word out and knowing that it's here. That's a very important point, and we'll definitely take it into consideration. Also, in addition to our other methods that we're looking to getting the word out. Yes, sir.
Who makes these decisions? You? The committees, or I mean, what if I were to have one of these properties? Who am I going to talk to? You, Armin, somebody here at City Hall? Somebody's going to make the decision. Right?
The decision whether to say yes to get an incentive, or okay. So the process will be similar to our current process, which is you come to City Hall or you call City Hall, and you say, I have a property and I have this in mind, and if your property is inside of the boundaries, the first thing we're going to do is notify them. You're actually inside the boundaries of the Infill Incentive Overlay District. So you have your Infill Incentive Overlay zoning designation, but you also have your base zoning. And at that point, the owner will decide which one they want to develop by. Whether they want to develop under the Infill Incentive Overlay designation and get all the incentives, or they just don't want to even touch it if they want to go with their base zoning. The majority of people will, of course, choose the plan and take one of the incentives. And at that point, we'll have a pre-development meeting. We'll schedule a pre-development meeting with the applicant, and we'll look at design. And then at that point, we'll go over some of the requirements, because that's actually what I was going to get to next. We have all these incentives, but we also have design requirements that they'll have to follow. This is to ensure aesthetic quality in the city. And if they decide that they want to follow the Infill Incentive Overlay zoning designation, take advantage of the incentives, and comply with our design guidelines, then we'll ask them to do a full submittal, just as any other project. We'll review, with the only thing that we'll add an extra layer of review, which will be reviewed by the design review committee. And we'll review the design, see if it's compliant with what we want to see in the plan, and then we'll award the incentive. That'll be the process. So it's not whether it's my final say or if it's Carbon's final say, but it's actually that committee's decision whether to award the incentive or not, and to permit the design proposed.
Mr. Chair and Vice Chair. Just to clarify, the design review committee is going to be made by several departments. We already have development review committees that we routinely meet and review each of the projects that are submitted to the city. So we already have one that is the minor modification committee, and it's public works, fire department, and community development. So we are thinking that the same review committee that reviews the minor modification can also review our new incentive plan. So we have a group of people reviewing the project as they come in.
Yes. Thank you, Carmen. Any other questions regarding the incentives or any processes explained so far?
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Galaviz.
Yes. You mentioned commercial lots or corner lots for commercial use in neighborhoods. Is that the only location, or is it open to middle lots? And how will that, I guess, process work, or what's your idea of how to address that challenge with neighbors?
So, Commissioner Galaviz, the way it's written right now, so the entertainment district, it's not just on corner lots. The entertainment district, I'm going to go back to the district slide here. The entertainment district does include some residential areas to the north and to the south of Main Street along Donald Street and Spring Street. There's a couple of single family homes here. There's residential uses. So these areas won't be limited to corner lots. In these lots, you'll be able to have any use in the entertainment district that is allowed on Spring Street and on Donald Street. In the other neighborhoods, though, in the Pioneer District to the north and the Heritage District to the south, those are primarily residential. And at this point, the plan is recommending that they stay residential in nature. We're not trying to dramatically change the landscape or the character of these areas. And the feedback that we've received, also they favor that. They want these areas to stay primarily residential. So in these areas, we have a table of uses that has certain limited commercial uses. Let me open the document here and read a few of them to you. So, for example, in the Pioneer District and in the Heritage District, on the corner lots only, and corner lots of two streets, not a corner of an alley in a street, just two streets. For example, here, Eucalyptus and State, or Musgrove and Spring, corner lots. You could have a catering service, a coffee shop, a farmer's market if you have a vacant lot, office, professional, studios, a limited service restaurant, a non-profit or social club. You know, these low intensity uses, and there's a couple more, but that should about paint the picture of what we're trying to accomplish. So we're not permitting them in the middle of the block because that's at this point, that's the direction that the plan is trying to achieve. Just keep it to the corners. However, if there is support for it in the future, if people really like this, having these amenities within walking distance of their neighborhoods, if they like this, we could potentially include that availability to the middle of the blocks too. But at this point, we're being this is the scale that we want to take this at. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, that clarifies it. I was just I was just so, I thought that with corner lots it's a great idea. I really like that concept because I know that in Summerton there is a lot of corner lots that, people have been looking to utilize not for residential, but commercial use. So I think that would provide some great infill for the community and opportunities. So thank you for the clarification.
Well, thank you for the question.
The clarification of La Paloma on the lot.
Yes, as Hector mentioned, these little commercial pockets, businesses that we already have some in Somerton, and they're quite, some of them are organic. They're organic examples of infill, such as La Paloma. It's a little snack shop on State and, what is it? Do you know? Eucalyptus. That's been there forever. It's a little snack shop that sells treats, ice cream, raspados, and it's been there forever. And the people, I think everyone likes it. I've never heard anyone complain about La Paloma. That's what it is. But that's kind of what we want to achieve with this plan. We want to permit these kinds of uses on corner lots all throughout Summerton. And not just that, that's just an example that we already have of a commercial use in a residential neighborhood. It works because they're limited. They're amenities. They're not eyesores or nuisances. Yes, Chairman Flores.
You mentioned La Paloma, so with the new plan, would they be able to demolish and build a new building?
Chairman Flores, with this plan, if you have a corner lot, or if you're looking to buying a corner lot, you could demolish the structure that's there, and you would be allowed to build one of the commercial uses which are permitted under the plan, yes. You would have to follow the design guidelines too. That's just the trade-off that we're asking, because you're going to bring in a small commercial to a residential neighborhood. We want to ensure that it's compatible with the neighborhood. As mentioned, we don't want it to be an eyesore. We want it to be a quality, nice-looking addition to the neighborhood, not something that's going to bring it all down. But to answer your question, yes, you would be able to do one of the permitted uses on corners. Any other questions?
Just have a comment.
Yes, Commissioner Magaña.
I think this is wonderful, great work. I think this is going to bring a lot of equitable development to the community, and I fully agree. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, where were we? This is just a visual representation of how an overlay works. And every single property in this infill incentive overlay district boundaries, they'll keep their base zoning. We're not rezoning it so that they don't have their base zoning. They will, however, have the supplemental overlay, infill incentive overlay on top of that zoning. And when it's time to develop or redevelop, they'll be able to decide whether they want to develop under their base zoning or their new infill incentive overlay zoning. It's completely optional. However, if you want to take advantage of one or any of the incentives, you have to develop under the overlay zoning, and you have to comply with the design standards. We believe that even with the design requirements, we think close to 90 to 95% of all new projects that come to this part of the city are going to opt to develop under the infill incentive overlay. It's just such a wonderful tool that we're going to have if this gets adopted. And the beauty of it is that it's optional. We're not forcing anyone to develop under it. If you want to develop under your base zoning, that's perfectly fine too. So yes, that's any questions on how that works? Okay. Just want to cover some of the design requirements. In the plan, there's a section for every sub-district. The entertainment district has district-specific design requirements. So does the Pioneer, and so does the Heritage District. And those design guidelines are tailored to that district. For example, this up here is a commercial example, something that we would find along Main Street. And this image, I'll tell you what's inviting about this image, what's appealing, what makes it compatible to the plan. This building shown up here has at least 3 different materials in the facade. You've got rock veneer, you've got wood, and you've got metal. That's one of the requirements. It's got different colors. You've got black, yellow, and brown. And this one's gray, orange, and whatever you want to call this, tan. Colors, materials, different projections, different heights, transparency. You've got at least 50% of the ground floor transparent. You've got decorative elements in the front in the form of planters, outdoor seating, things of that. You've got your nice lamps here. All these things are in the code. When a project wants to develop and they want to utilize the incentives in the incentive package, they will have to adhere to these design guidelines. And trust me, they are not at all extreme. These are things that are happening on their own. You see it in other cities. Architects and builders are incorporating these features without being required. But we want to ensure that they get put in Somerton as well. But we don't want to see long blank walls of nothingness. We want to see quality, dimension, color, projections. We want to see a nice and attractive area to be in. The same goes for the residential. The residential examples here, I'll just go over some of the stuff that's here. We ask that they incorporate certain decorative elements such as the stone veneer, a covered porch, some columns, some wood shutters, concrete tile on the roofs. So these are things that are very easy to do, and you don't have to do all of them, but you have to do some of them. And we'll review every project case by case, and we'll go over the design requirements. And we've been in communication with some of the local contractors of the area, the local builders, and basically this is the comment from all of them. That's something we're doing already. We would have no problem incorporating this into a project that we build in here. Oh yeah, of course. And I'll take these 2 incentives. That's pretty much been the feedback so far. We have a wait list of people who are calling. Is it adopted yet? Is it ready? I am not kidding. And a lot of them wanted to be here tonight, but because of COVID restrictions, they unfortunately could not. But I'm sure they're rooting us from afar. Down here are just some real world examples of some of the decorative elements that we want to see that we're incorporating in the plan as requirements. All with the goal of beautifying Somerton, of making Somerton literally the best little city in Arizona, as our slogan says. We want to make this a beautiful little town, little city. And we believe that we have the tools to do it with this plan, or at least get us on the right track.
Can you go back to the previous slide? Talk a little bit about the area access from residential model that you showed us. Are they going to show, if they have area access, then the facade will be different. Not having the garage in the front, it's going to be in the back.
Yes, actually, I unfortunately did not include that in this slideshow, but there is a new example in the updated draft of the plan, which is available on the city website now. The new draft shows a visual example of a single-family home somewhere in the Pioneer in the Heritage District that does not have a garage in the front. It actually looks really nice. It looks like homes did back then, when cars really weren't as prominent as they are, talking like before 1920 or so. But it looks like a very nice traditional home. It looks a lot different than what you see now. Just the garage is the dominant feature, the dominant architectural feature. We want to encourage that, placing the garage in the back of the property rather than the front. And that kind of is tied to the alley paving waiver, where if you wanted to do that right now, you would have to pave the alley. Now you don't have to. So we're encouraging it, and we're also providing an incentive to maybe nudge you to do it. But yeah, it does look very nice. I wish I had an image to show you, but it is in the new draft, which is available online. Of a single-family home with no garage in the front. It looks really neat.
No gutters in the front, and that reduces the front setback also as well. Right now, we have 22 front setback, and because we have the garage in the front, most of the new houses have the garage in the front. But if someone decides to place the garage in the back, now they can move towards the street, and the setback will be reduced to 20 feet. So that will be another plus for new construction.
Correct. Yes.
And also the portions.
Yes. It all kind of goes tied with the flexible development standards incentive. If you choose to have your garage in the back, it opens up all kinds of new possibilities in the front, because the garage has to be set back at 20 feet no matter what. That's just for visibility. But if your garage is no longer in the front, you can actually build closer to the street, and you can have a larger building too, larger house footprint. Your setback is reduced to 15 feet for the house and 10 feet for your front porch, if you don't have the garage in the front. Question, Chairman Flores?
Yeah, you're talking the garage for properties that have access to the alley, right?
Yes.
What if they don't and they wanna do that?
So
They need to meet the criteria in order for them to qualify for the permit.
yeah, Chairman Flores, I was in one of my earlier slides. I showed the map, and I think it was a question by Commissioner Galaviz that he asked, and I pointed out that all the properties in this district, in the influence overlays, have alley access. The vast majority, with the exception of the Somerton Courts area, and then there's a row on Congress that also does not have alley access. But about 90% of them do. So the majority of people will be able to take advantage of that. So yeah, these are some of our. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I think that's super interesting, because I think it also brings into consideration safety considerations. If we have cars in the back, it's more walkable on the sidewalk, So I think that's super cool. It's a cool idea. And it also, like that eyesore, like that big box garage, in my mind, is an eyesore, And if we try to sort of nudge them, like how you're saying, I think that's super cool.
I couldn't agree more, Commissioner Magana. Thank you for your comment. And yeah, it's definitely, they do look nice. And I'll make sure to include this for the council presentation, the garage in the back. I really wish I had done this for this meeting. I do apologize. But I encourage you to please check out the updated draft. Go under Pioneer District in the draft, and it's all there. You can take a look. The plan also addresses, trees and right-of-way occupation, having chairs and tables on primarily in an entertainment district. It also talks about the certain signs, types of signs that we want to see in the infill incentive overlay. For the properties that you can't have a sign, we want to make sure it's a good sign, a quality sign. We're trying to get away from those big, ugly box type signs on Main Street. It's a big, fat rectangle that you insert your business name, and then when you move out of there, you take it out, and then you have an empty box. We're trying to get away from that. We're trying to move into something more like this, where it's a projection sign, or something that's what is called channel lettering, recessed metal letters, quality sign. That's what makes these little differences make a huge difference. If you go to a nice we have a very nice downtown, but one of the nicer downtowns, these are the little things that wow, this place is really nice. These little things make a huge difference. No more banners either. No more tarps. No more letters painted directly on the building, unless if you do it nicely, like a mural kind of deal. But but for the most part, no more painting on buildings, no more banners, no more feather banners, no more sign cabinets. It's all in the book. These are just design. I think we're getting perhaps too into the design, but we think that these are aesthetic guidelines, and they'll mostly enhance, not become a burden on development. We think that it's all going to work out very nice. This is just an example that I talked about this earlier. We had a case back in 2018 where the Housing America Corporation had these lots between Jacobs and, what is this street? Is Dorge? South of JPS. I think it's cut off here. But they own 2 properties here, and it was zoned R3. And they had to go through the burdensome process of rezoning to single family from R3 to single family and changing the general plan land use. Took them about 3 months, 3 or 4 months, cost them, I think, over close to $2,000 to do it. All and all just to build 2 single family homes in a neighborhood full of single family homes, because our zoning ordinance is that prohibitive. So something like this would never happen again, basically, under this plan. If that plan had been adopted, so this is what they had to do: is do a general plan amendment, a rezoning, and then we were able to review their plan. If this plan had been in place at that time, they could have committed to developing under the Infill Incentive Overlay Plan regulations. It would have gone straight to plan review. They could have said, yeah, we'll give you a covered porch and some rock veneer, and we all good. It would have been, perhaps I'm oversimplifying it, but it would have been something like that. It would have been a lot simpler, a lot cheaper too, and I bet they would have been a lot happier. That's how the plan works. If we can find an incentive for you, we'll give it to you, but you have to commit to the design standards to make the project an asset to the neighborhood, a visual asset. Any questions at this point? Okay, I'm going to proceed to the to this slide here. So this is the January 2020 draft of the document. It was available online for a couple months, and this is the draft that most people have seen, the January 2020 draft. And it's called January 2020 because that's when we put it out, and we were actually going to go forward with adoption back then up until March, but we had to stop. So we've had some time to think about some changes, take some feedback in, and create a few changes to the most recent draft, which we're working on and will be completed before the adoption. So now we have a December draft, and that's on the city website now. These are the most significant changes that were included in the December draft that are not in the January 2020 draft. So the Heritage District was expanded by about 18 acres, and it now includes the Somerton Courts area and a row of homes along Congress that were added to that Heritage District. We went back and looked at this part of the city and felt that it met the criteria to be included in this plan. There's a lot of older mobile homes, and there's a couple abandoned homes. There's empty lots. You know, the area could have really benefited from using the infill plan. The only feature that wasn't included in it was that it didn't have alley access. That was the only reason it wasn't originally included in the original boundaries. But we actually had some feedback from Yuma County. The Yuma County suggested that we add this area to the plan boundaries, and we looked at it and we said, oh, you know what? They're right. You know, a lot of people could benefit this. So the Heritage District grew by 18 acres from January to now. But this has been presented for a couple months now. This didn't happen recently. This addition was back in August, September, and we went to all the neighborhood meetings, we went to all the open houses with all these amendments. The second amendment is that the smoke shops and tattoo parlors will go from being conditional to permitted in the entertainment district. Now, there are some residential areas in the entertainment district that perhaps a smoke shop or a tattoo parlor would not be compatible. So we added a footnote to clarify that tattoo shops and smoke shops, although permitted now in the entertainment district, will be limited to be sited along Main Street only. Even if you have an entertainment district parcel on Spring Street, you can't have a smoke shop or a tattoo parlor. It's only on Main Street. That's another change. And there was a setback increase in the Heritage and Pioneer District. We were kind of talking about this, where if you have your garage in the back, you can have your house at 15 feet and your porch at 10 feet. Well, that's the newest way it's worded. Before it was worded that the whole house could be up to 10 feet in the front. We looked at that and we kind of said, you know what, that might be a little too out there. For the whole building to be up to 10 feet, it might block the visibility. But currently, you can reduce your front setback up to 16 feet. We figured 15 feet would be an adequate setback for the front of the house and 10 feet for the porch when your garage is in the back. So those are the three most significant changes. There are many more changes in the draft, but they're mostly cosmetic. A couple of images changed, example images. You know, we just did a couple of housekeeping throughout the document, and that's all in the new draft. But as far as context, these are the three biggest changes from the January draft to now. Any questions on these?
And when Saul mentioned about housekeeping and cosmetic, it's about correcting typos and editing and making sure that we have the page numbering look visible, things of that nature, things that are going to make the whole document user-friendly. No changes in the actual content other than these three that we just presented. Nothing else has changed.
Yes, correct. This is and it's standard, you know, for us to do these kind of corrections as we go along. But we're getting pretty close to having our final draft, and hopefully by the next meeting that we have, it'll be the final draft. So at this point, if there are no further questions, that concludes my presentation for now. And I think we could hear from any members of the public or any commissioners who may have questions or comments at this point.
Gentlemen, would you entertain a motion?
Yeah. Is there a motion?
I move to recommend approval of overlay rebuilding case number PLN 20-0026 with the conditions listed in Exhibit A.
Let me just make sure that we are taking the motions correctly. Yeah, there are two motions. The first motion is in regards to the text amendment, and I believe it's the one that you just made, Commissioner Rice, Vice Chair Rice.
No, the number I'm approving is 2005.
That is correct. That's for the text.
I'm just reading it off of here.
That is it's on your screen, right there on your screen. You can see the correct information and the two motions that we need. The first one will be the text amendment because we need to put it in the in the zoning code first. So if you may entertain.
Yes.
Okay.
Es el trabajo de toda mi vida. O firmas. Cualquier cosa que funcione en el rancho.
0.0025, the conditions of approval of the facilitated for staff.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? I second that motion to approve. It's been moved and second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes.
Okay, and now the second motion that we need is to include the overlay on the zoning map. So that's another motion that we need in order for us to present it to council.
I move to recommend approval of overlay case number PL 200026 with the conditions listed in Exhibit A.
It's been moved and second to approve case number PLN 20-0026. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you to all and the rest of the staff.
And just for your information, this information is going to be presented to City Council at their next regular meeting this coming Tuesday, December 15th. And we have asked to have a work session. Hopefully by tomorrow, we are going to confirm if we are going to have a work session with council the same day from 6 to 7, and then the regular meeting from 7 on. That's when we are going to be presenting this plan to the City Council.
Very well, summer referendums.
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, our next regular meeting is scheduled for December 21st, but I do believe we don't have any items for the agenda for this upcoming meeting, so therefore we are going to be canceling this meeting. I will be sending you via email the schedule of meetings for year 2021 that is around the corner already. So I will be sending you all of you emails. The new occasion that we're going to have for next year. As of current projects, we continue working with the high school district on the design, improvement, construction fees, etc. for the future high school. It's moving slowly but surely. We perhaps residents don't see everything that is on the behind the scenes. We have a lot of work, Hector, myself, and city manager, public works, everybody's involved in this project with the high school district. We attend weekly meetings with the high school design team, with their engineers, with our legal counseling. We are working on that particular project. Also, we continue working with the Somerton School District to review the construction plans they have submitted. They submitted plans for their new elementary school that is going to be along Main Street and just across the street from the future high school area. So we're going to have a high school and a new elementary school in the same area, and we are working with them exactly the same situation. We are working with the design, we're working with the improvements, we're going to be providing what. So all this information, we're doing it with both school districts almost at the same time. The 2020 general plan was ratified by the Somerton voters at this past election. So as of November 3rd, it was ratified, and we have a new 2020 general plan. What I'm going to do is I am going to send all of you commissioners the link. We have it on the website already. I can also put together a book that is gonna look almost like this, hard copy. If you want a hard copy, let me know and I will send you a hard copy. But I can also send you a link. That way it's a lot easier for you to just access the link Well, yes, rather than having a hard copy, but if for any reason you prefer a hard copy, let me know and I will deliver a hard copy for you. Okay, so that we have a new general plan that is going to be with us for the next 10 years. And that's all I have. City Hall is closed to the public just because we opened it for a few weeks and due to the basic cases, again, we have closed it to the public, but we continue working via telephone, we do virtual meetings, we continue. We have a lot of projects that we are moving forward and we're still here, we're still working. That's all I have for.
Mr. Chair, maybe I can give you some updates as well for economic development. Not sure you know, but we have a new project coming in. Michoacana Plaza is going to be located on the southwest corner of Somerton Avenue, Main Street. We have a brand new building there in the corner. The permit is going to be issued just in the next few days. Across the street, where the Metro PCS used to be, they're building, remodeling the building for a new Chinese restaurant, the Oriental House. It's going to be there too very soon. And today we had the grand opening for a new restaurant on the name is La Cabaña Breakfast and Grill, located on the previously next to the gas station, right there in that building with the Campesinos y Fronteras. There's going to be a new restaurant starting tomorrow morning. So you're all welcome to visit the new restaurant. And soon, we have 2 more businesses in Main Street. Thank you.
Okay, that's all we have.
Once again, thank you, staff, for all your hard work. And the incoming members as well, welcome aboard. Lots to learn, there's lots to accomplish, so thank you for serving. And happy holidays.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy holidays to you too.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, move to adjourn, is there a second? No. Meeting adjourned at 10:30.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Very nice.